This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Partner in building a culture of life in Illinois at the 51st Annual Leader for Life Banquet featuring former Congressman Trey Gowdy.
Oh, that's a big get.
Yeah, that's going to be good. The MC is
I heard is a really good-looking, smart, single gentleman named Dan Proft.
You heard right.
Oh, yeah.
And those adjectives couldn't be more appropriate. And Mary Kate Norrie, Executive Director of Illinois Right to Life, will co-MC with me. The Leaders for Life Banquet will be held a week from tomorrow night, Friday, May 17th in Lombard. Tickets available, IllinoisRightToLife.org. That's IllinoisRightToLife.org. Come see Trey Gowdy. Should be heap big fun. And wasn't fun yesterday because per Jerry Nadler, the august chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, we now have a constitutional crisis because Attorney General Bill Barr failed to show up for finger-licking Steve Cohen's picnic the other week, and now the Republic is in jeopardy.
So while this is stonewalling information with respect to the Russian attack on our democracy in 2016, with respect to the president's campaign, cooperation with that attack, to the president's obstructions of justice in seeking to stop the investigation of that attack, it goes far broader than that. It's an attack on the ability of the American people to know what the executive branch is doing and to have responsible government. It is an attack on the essence of our democracy, and we must oppose this with every fiber of our being. And that's why we today referred a contempt citation to the House floor. The House will have to vote that contempt citation to begin the court battle. There can be no higher stakes than this attempt to arrogate all power to the executive branch away from Congress and, more important, away from the American people. We've talked for a long time about approaching a constitutional crisis. We are now in it.
Now in it. Who are here?
We are now in a constitutional crisis.
We made it.
God. Bee-boo, bee-boo.
We made it.
But he actually wants Attorney General William Barr picked up by the Sergeant at Arms, physically taken.
Throw him in the can. That's right.
To the Capitol.
Yeah.
And then testify.
Yeah, where Lois Lerner should have gone, that's where he wants Bill Barr to go. Here's the thing. Jerry Nadler has really come a long way over the decades. His tenure in Congress, gotten in shape.
Well, yeah, he used to weigh 340, and he's 5'4", and he had the tummy thing done.
Yeah, well,
or the stomach. They removed a fourth of his stomach.
Sure, they did. They also back in 1998, he didn't want anything. You know, he didn't want a lot of. I should say anything. He didn't want a lot of the Starr report on Clinton. Didn't want that released, so he's evolved on that. Also in 2012. You'll recall President Obama's Attorney General, his name was Eric Holder, became the first sitting member of the President's cabinet in U.S. history to be held in contempt of Congress. That's for failure to turn over documents related to his Operation Fast and Furious, which seemingly was to help arm Mexican drug cartels, which is a bit curious. In response to Holder being held in contempt, Nadler tweeted at the time, this was 7 years ago, just joined the walkout for the House chamber to protest the shameful, politically motivated GOP vote holding AG Holder in contempt. So there's been a real evolution by Jerry Nadler and so many others. And per Nancy Pelosi, we may not even need him. We may not even need the House Judiciary Committee. Because Trump is self-impeaching.
Yeah.
He's a walking self-cleaning oven. For more on this topic and Constitutional Crisis 2019, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Andy McCarthy, of course, former federal prosecutor, chief assistant U.S. attorney in Manhattan, contributing editor to National Review. Andy, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. How are you?
Good. So what are we to do about this constitutional crisis? Should the entire Trump administration, at least the upper reaches of it, just resign?
Yeah, I think pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing that we have a constitutional crisis. The Constitution is working exactly as designed, and somehow that puts us in crisis. You know, the two political branches are in exactly the kind of tussle that the framers anticipated, because they knew that the powers that they gave to the two political branches are often in tension. So, you know, you're going to have disputes, and we're now having one where Congress is pretending that its oversight authority is being flouted. And their theory for this is that the Attorney General, by having given to Congress a report that by law he doesn't need to give to Congress, somehow he has he's undermining their oversight powers. And I think the executive branch at this point figures no matter what they give to Nadler and his committee, they're going to be accused of stonewalling. I mean, if you think about it, the Mueller report, about 95% of it is disclosed to everyone.
Yeah.
There's another volume of it that's like closer to 98 or 99% disclosed that only has some grand jury material redacted out of it that's available to leadership in Congress, at least a number of them who have security clearances and the like. And the only stuff that's been completely withheld is grand jury material, which is illegal by law to disclose, and therefore, you know, because it's Congress's own law, you know, for the last month, if they didn't, you know, if they hadn't been so consumed with stunts like holding the Attorney General in contempt, they could have proposed a 2-line amendment to the Rule 6E, and just said, in special counsel investigations, Congress can get disclosure of the grand jury material, and then they wouldn't need to have an argument about it, right? They could just have it, but they don't want the material. They want to have a stunt that they can try to turn into Watergate. So I think if you're the executive branch at this point, you realize if we give them everything but we hold back one comma, we're going to be accused of, you know, obstruction and stonewalling and all that stuff. So at this point, why give them anything?
But this isn't unprecedented to be.
What's the point?
Yeah, this isn't unprecedented, though, for Attorney General to be held in contempt of Congress, because it wasn't Eric Holder, once he didn't turn over documents for Fast and Furious, didn't the same thing happen to him?
Yeah, the difference, Amy, I think, is that Holder actually did stonewall.
Okay.
You know, what happened in Fast and Furious was Holder lied to Congress about what was known to the Justice Department about this cockamamie Justice Department law enforcement operation where they allowed firearms to walk. I think what clearly was going on there was they were trying to create a narrative that American gun rights were responsible for, you know, among other things, murderous violence in Mexico and the like. And the idea was to ratchet up pressure to have more gun regulations. And it was an idiotic operation. And what ended up happening was it was so recklessly irresponsible that a Border Patrol officer actually ended up being killed. And the Justice Department was trying to cover up what it knew about the operation when it knew everything about the operation. And when I think the House finally held Holder in contempt, it was not a situation where Holder had given the Congress 96% of what it was asking for. To the contrary, he told them to basically go pound sand. And when they held him in contempt, Obama jumped in and asserted executive privilege to keep the materials away from Congress. So
Right,
it's a very different situation.
Although the assertion of executive privilege, which congressional Democrats, by President Obama, which congressional Democrats had no problem. Jerry Nadler was so upset he had to walk out at the maltreatment of Eric Holder. The assertion of executive privilege here on the Mueller report by President Trump is a problem for them now, of course, because you know their interests change, so their positions do. But what about Trump Jr. and Richard Burr's Senate Intelligence Committee subpoenaing Donald Trump Jr.? How do you interpret that?
Well, you know, it's hard to look at it in any other way other than they are presumably continuing to look into the Trump Tower meeting, which.
But I mean, what
I must.
right? What's the point of that, though? You had essentially clearance of any American colluding with the Russians by Mueller. So, what it is Burr and Senate Intel Committee? They just don't have anything else to do.
Dan, that was what I was just going to ask you. So now you've stolen my lack of thunder.
Sorry.
I don't see that there's any point in this other than to pursue that. I mean, Don Jr. has counsel, and presumably they've told him what they want. And my understanding is he's given, I don't know how many
25 hours in front of
testimony to
Congress
that
already.
committee.
Yep.
And he's continuing apparently to give them documents. So, I look, I don't know that they'll be able to compel him to appear, and why they're continuing to pursue this. I don't know, other than that the Democrats want to pursue it, and Burr is rolling over for them, which is pretty typical. But I don't know. I don't know why Republicans would help them in what at this point has been shown to be more farce than anything else. I think at this point, after 2.5 years, I think we ought to be able to say Russia tried to interfere in our electoral campaign in 2016. It's not exactly unprecedented. Since the Bolshevik Revolution, the Russians interfere in our elections. We interfere in elections all around the world. This is what great powers do when there are other countries involved that affect their interests. And what I continue to point out to people, just to look at this in terms of the big picture, 2 weeks before the election, Hillary Clinton had a debate with Donald Trump at which he suggested he might not accept the outcome of the election, and she said that was horrifying, that anybody could conceivably question the legitimacy of our election. And then Obama went out on the campaign stump and said the whole thing.
Yeah.
At the moment that happened, they knew everything about Russia's interference in our election that we know now. But they took that position because, number one, they knew that it was not that big of a deal. What Russia did was a drop in the ocean compared to like all of the propaganda and electioneering that goes on in our election cycles. It didn't make a bit of difference. They knew it didn't make a bit of difference. And if Hillary Clinton had won the election, you would never, ever have heard of Russia and interference in the election again. We wouldn't have heard any of this stuff.
That's a really great point about not just what they said, the hypocrisy of it, given their position today, but also what they knew when they said it. That's really a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way. I wanted to get your take on this piece in The Hill, colorful piece to say the least, by Kevin Brock, who's a former assistant director of intelligence at the FBI, who writes about Comey having a problem. And just because it's fun, he writes, the narrative being set by the unsparing Attorney General, whose words in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee last week landed in the Trump opposition world like holy water on Linda Blair. Shrieking heads haven't stopped spinning since. He suggests that part of Comey's more aggressive posture of late, back on the op-ed pages of the New York Times and the like, is because he knows he's in trouble and he's starting to bail water.
Yeah, well, look, I've heard, we've all heard, like the last 3 years, right? Any second now, it's coming. Any second, they're gonna unseal all the documents, and everybody's gonna be frog marched out of FBI headquarters in handcuffs and all that stuff. And I'm sitting there reading this thing, and I'm saying, on the one hand, I do think that the FBI has a lot to answer for here. On the other hand, I was kind of wondering if, like, Comey had cut ahead of Brock on the lunch line or something in the cafeteria. It seemed like that, there's some ill feeling going on there. But look, I think the FBI has a lot to answer for here, and they're being looked at by the Inspector General. Barr has made clear that he intends to get to the bottom of how this farce originated. I've looked at the Mueller report, and I can only look at 10 or 15 pages of it at a time. And then I just get so angry I have to put it down because you can see all the little lawyer tricks in there, and all the ways that they try to invert the burden of proof, and they flip from, the important thing is what people like George Papadopoulos say up until the point where they're trying to justify why they opened this investigation. Then it's not what Papadopoulos said, it's what this screwball Australian diplomat understood him to mean, which, after consulting with the Obama State Department, they decided that, the Trump campaign must be complicit in, the DNC hacks or the hacked DNC emails, which there's not, if you look through the 448 pages of the report, there's not a shred of evidence for that. So, I think that it's not unlikely that Comey is becoming very public in the last couple of weeks. That op-ed was outrageous about Trump eating bar soul and little bites or whatever stupid thing.
Yeah, he's going to be on CNN Town Hall tonight.
Yeah, and all 15 people who watch that stuff will probably be tuning in, I'm sure.
It's fascinating.
So, look, he's up and out there, and they're they're spinning like crazy. I'm a little bit. I know Comey for a very long time, so I'm kind of surprised at how nakedly partisan he's become. But that's his choice. But he may be trying to get out in front of what they figure is going to be a very harsh report from the Inspector General.
Mm-hmm.
But, look, I thought the last report from the Inspector General was going to be harsh, and I think a lot of the fact-finding was pretty embarrassing for the FBI, but it was softened in the ultimate conclusions. And we've had, just to I guess repeat what I've already said, we've been spun up any number of times about how the hammer is finally coming down here, and it never happens. So, I hope that there's going to be accountability here, and I hope this is going to be looked at in a hard way. And I have confidence in the Attorney General. I think if he says that he's going to get to the bottom of it, he's going to undertake to get to the bottom of it, and that's probably why they're attacking the messenger the way they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, I've been disappointed too many times to get too whipped up. I'll be delighted when it happens, if it happens. But
all right,
holding my breath.
Hopefully you'll be able to learn to love again, Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney, contributing editor at Nash Review. Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560.